Variably cloudy this evening with temperatures dropping through the...
February 20th, 1992.
These children are treated as mental patients and given psychiatric drugs. The trouble is, there's nothing wrong with them.
The bottom line is that normal or above normal children are being diagnosed as mentally retarded.
Jay Shadler travels to Russia and finds thousands of orphans locked away.
He said the Soviet Union needs unskilled, unthinking manual workers.
Tonight, an investigation and how some of them are making their escape to the U.S. and a new home.
The mafia's notorious code of silence.
We'll what? Until death.
The blood oath called Omerta. If you break it...
Death. Automatic. I mean, it's just death. There's no other way.
Tonight, Chris Wallace on the mob. From the Scarfo trial to the Gotti trial, a whole new breed of yuppie mobsters are risking death by betraying the mafia's sacred vow of loyalty.
Who said I'm against it? You don't listen.
He's outspoken.
I want to make clear to you how little patience I have with your viewpoint.
He's witty.
This fool will kill me.
And for 34 years, he kept a secret and became one of the most powerful men in Congress.
I'm gay.
Tonight, the tough-talking Congressman Barney Frank argues about politics and privacy and whether it's time for journalists to butt out.
What if you're a journalist and you hear that a journalist is gay or is that an affair? Journalists are very important people.
The taxpayer doesn't pay me.
If knowing about somebody's sex life is so important, when you start telling the truth about each other, I'll be more persuaded.
I was in a marriage, comfortable, happy, with everything that anyone could ever want.
Tonight, a video letter from a woman who had it all until her life changed forever.
When the nurse on the phone says, just a minute, he puts the doctor on the phone, and then he said to me, Mary, I'm sorry.
From ABC News, with anchors Diane Sawyer in New York, Sam Donaldson in Washington, Chief Correspondent Chris Wallace, Judd Rhodes, Jay Shadler, Sylvia Chase, and John Quinones. This is Prime Time.
You've just poured yourself a bowl of Kellogg's Crispix when?
Hello? Mom, what a surprise. Well, actually, my cereal's sitting in milk.
When will you get back to your Kellogg's Crispix? It's anybody's guess.
Uh-huh. But they wouldn't give your money back?
Fortunately, Kellogg's Crispix stays crisp and delicious in milk.
I'm sure Aunt Helen didn't mean it that way.
Even if you can't get to it right away.
Uh-huh. Still crispy. You're absolutely right, Mom.
Kellogg's Crispix, the taste that waits for you.
It's a fast-paced, gotta-go world we live in. So, why not sit back and enjoy the ride in a luxury performance car designed to keep up with it? The 5-cylinder, 20-valve, accurate figure.
Prime Time. From New York, Diane Sawyer.
Good evening. We begin tonight with a story about some children who need all of our help. In a sense, they're the youngest victims of the forces of history. Some time ago, we heard that under the old Soviet system, hundreds of thousands of children were being rounded up, locked away, and put on powerful drugs. And their only crime was that they were orphans. Recently, Jay Shadler traveled to Russia to find out if this is still going on, and to tell us how some of the children are making their escape.
They are children, and they are orphans. Having lost or been abandoned by their parents, they are growing up in state institutions in the former Soviet Union. Most will spend their entire lives locked into a system poisoned by abuse and terror. Young people like Sasha and Sergei.
Did the injections hurt?
Yes, they were very painful, especially when the drug starts going in. And I always wish that they would do it slower. It was just so painful, and that was what everyone was most afraid of.
I had a horrible suspicion that something might be happening on these lines. I never envisaged anything of the scale and the systematic nature of what we were subsequently to find.
Caroline Cox is a member of Britain's House of Lords and a longtime campaigner for human rights. 5 months ago, she and a team of British medical experts were invited by local Russian authorities to investigate claims of mistreatment in Russian orphanages, including the charge that normal children were being abused with tranquilizers and antipsychotic drugs after being wrongly diagnosed as mentally retarded.
I said as we came out to the People's Deputy who had taken us in, I don't understand what's happening here. What's going on? These kids aren't mentally handicapped. And he just looked me straight in the face and he said, the Soviet Union needs unskilled, unthinking manual workers. That's what's going on.
Primetime's own cameras retraced Cox's tour of Russian orphanages and psychiatric hospitals in St. Petersburg and Moscow. It is in these institutions where the trail of abuse begins, as orphans are tagged with the label oligophrenic.
These kids are diagnosed as oligophrenic. What does that mean?
The literal meaning of that word oligophrenia is small brain. The way in which they use it in Russia is what we would say mentally handicapped.
The bottom line is that normal or above normal children are being diagnosed as mentally retarded.
Correct. To be an orphan is almost synonymous with being defined as an oligophrenic or mentally handicapped. The two go together almost identically.
It's estimated, for example, that here in St. Petersburg alone, there are 16,000 orphans, and as many as a third of those children may have been misdiagnosed as mentally handicapped. Politics, not science or psychiatry, is the reason. For 70 years, the communists were busy telling the world they were creating the portrait of the perfect society, and orphans just didn't fit into the picture.
The orphanage system simply represents the most ideal place to educate biological robots. An ideal system for the complete suppression of individual rights.
Deputy Alexander Rodin is a city councilman in St. Petersburg and leading the call for an international investigation into Russian orphanages. Rodin took us inside Orphan House 15, one of 37 orphanages in this city.
It's heartbreaking to visit the children's homes. Even healthy children can't break out of the system.
Though most of the orphans here have no parents, many others have been abandoned by theirs as the growing economic crisis in this country shatters the stability of the family. Rejected, they are left to live in places like House 15. Stark rooms devoid of possessions. Primitive plumbing with no privacy. This is home for 170 children from 7 to 15 years old, and every one of them has been systematically labeled mentally retarded. In a hall outside the cafeteria, we met the home's nurse.
You're saying that every child in this building is oligophrenic?
Yes.
How do you know that?
Because there is a report from a psychiatric hospital, so they come here with that diagnosis.
But what if that diagnosis is wrong? That's what happened to 14-year-old Victor. Institutionalized since he was 5, we found him in one of the wards upstairs.
Do you know what oligophrenic means?
No. No. All I know is that everyone here is registered with the psychiatric hospital.
Why would you be called mentally retarded if you're not?
Because I don't have any parents. That's why they put me here in this boarding house.
Victor was one of the children tested by British doctors just last fall and found to be perfectly normal.
Apart from being defective in any intellectual sense, is extremely articulate, ambitious, and in a sense knows his own potential.
Using internationally standardized intelligence tests, psychologists conducted exams in 15 Russian orphanages. We asked Valerie Muter, the team's clinical psychologist, to describe one of the tests.
Now what's happening here?
The child is given 4 colored blocks and he has to copy the pattern on the card. It is one of the most reliable and accurate tests for measuring ability.
Having tested 171 orphans, the British team concluded that between 1/3 and 2/3 of the children were of average or even above average intellectual ability.
The fact that we found even a few children who had been misclassified would generate a great deal of concern. We found very large numbers.
Back at House 15, we had walked into an argument between this boy and the director of the orphanage.
This boy says that one of his friends was sent to a psychiatric hospital. Do you know anything about that?
As far as his friend is concerned, he is seriously ill.
That's a good one. Zenya's sick? Like hell he is. You're the sick one.
The boy's anger may be justified. It's estimated that 6 of every 10 orphan boys are eventually sent to psychiatric hospitals for rebelling against their treatment in the orphanages. Primetime's hidden camera visited a psychiatric hospital in St. Petersburg. Once here, orphans may be forced onto a regime of powerful drugs that in normally healthy children can cause long-term brain and liver damage.
We were astonished when we looked at the case notes and saw the regime of drugs that was prescribed seemed to us to be inexplicable by Western standards.
Drugs like magnesium sulfate, rarely used in the West and then only to prevent seizures in pregnant women. Thorazine, an antipsychotic commonly used to treat schizophrenia. And Solvazine, a drug that causes cramps and high fevers. Once used on Soviet dissidents, the British investigators say it has also been used on orphans as punishment.
What you're saying is that the drugs were used in part just to control these kids.
That was our perception. We could find no other reasons giving it.
These drugs were being used on average children, mentally normal children?
Normal, lively, bright youngsters you'd find in your local high school.
If you didn't take the pills, then you were forced to take double or even triple the dose, or else an injection, no matter what.
16-year-old Sergei was sent to psychiatric hospitals in Moscow 4 times during the 12 years he lived in orphanages. Like dozens of other children Primetime spoke to, Sergei says he was repeatedly given pills and injections, including aminazine, a drug rarely used in the West and then only on the most emotionally disturbed patients.
What was the purpose?
It was often a question simply of the director's supervisor saying, "He's sick. He's a mental case."
Why does the boy need to go into it? All you need to do is look at him and find out why they used aminazine on him.
Valentina Kozhennikova is the director of Moscow's Psychiatric Hospital No. 6, where Sergei received his medication.
In the West, aminazine is used as an antipsychotic drug, but this was used on a boy who did not have severe psychiatric problems.
Anything is possible. If it was indeed used contrary to the indications, then that will be reason for us to hold an inquiry.
How can this happen even once, for a child to be given a drug that is inappropriate, unnecessary for them, as punishment?
What answer can I give you to that question? It's a disgrace. What else can I say?
The abuses suffered by these children don't end when they leave the hospitals and the orphanages. By age 15, they are assigned to state-run hostels attached to factories, where they become a captive labor pool for jobs no one else would want. At this shoe factory in St. Petersburg, wages run an average of 250 rubles a month, less than $1 US. But even that may be taken from the children.
I don't have enough money for clothes. They take my money away.
This 14-year-old girl was telling British investigators that her wages had been taken by factory managers when her boss broke off the interview.
Come here.
Don't touch me.
Get back to your place. You shouldn't be filming this.
Exploited at work and mistreated in the orphanages, it's not surprising that many of the children eventually take their chances on the streets. Homeless or living in abandoned buildings, it's estimated that 50% of the orphans end up in prisons like this one in St. Petersburg.
They are in cells that were originally designed for 3. They now have 15 crammed into each of these cells. You see they're stacked in bunks, 3 high. There's no fresh air. If you go into the cell, it absolutely stinks.
Having been warehoused in institutions all their lives, few of these youngsters have the skills to make a living. So they steal to stay alive. That's what 17-year-old Sasha did.
What did you steal?
Nothing much, a bit of food.
And why did you steal food?
Because 30 rubles a month at a technical school is impossible to live on.
So they put you in prison because you stole food, simply because you were hungry?
Yes.
Sasha, like so many of the others here, had been diagnosed mentally ill, oligophrenic. He was held for 1.5 years without ever being charged with a crime, before Deputy Roden was finally able to free him, and the British team was able to meet him.
I remember standing there literally with the clothes he had on and nothing else of which to face the future. And I remember thinking, this is a picture of ultimate human tragedy.
The hard truth for nearly all of the children that we've met in this story is that the label oligophrenic will shadow them for the rest of their lives. If this cycle of misdiagnosis and mistreatment is to be broken, it will have to begin here with the youngest of the orphans. And their best chance for a better future may not lie in this country at all.
9 Russian orphans arrived in New York this week.
They are among the first to be adopted by American parents, since new Russian laws legalized foreign adoptions. But these are the fortunate few.
Sister, honey.
Too young to have been mislabeled mentally retarded, they will be free to start a new life. While back in Russia, thousands of older children will have no escape from theirs.
You could see no ray of light anywhere. Once they were taken into the system, trapped in the system, there was no way out.
By the way, one of the problems for the older children is that U.S. immigration law restricts the adoption of mentally handicapped children, even if the diagnosis is wrong. So a number of people are working in Russia right now to change the diagnoses so that these older children can also come to American families and also begin a new life.
When we come back,
Bang! The gun went off. 38, pretty loud. And Pat's head went like this.
the mafia's code of silence. You only break it once. But that tradition is dying. Now there's a new generation of mobster willing to betray the family for a better deal. When Primetime continues.
In the silent dawn, a golden sun, soft kiss, warm smile, the day's begun, the touch, the feel, the fabric of our lives, the touch, the feel of cotton, the fabric of our lives.
Yeah. The very first time I ate equal. It's such a personal thing. I put it in my cereal, I put it in my iced tea, I put it on half a grapefruit. I think that people don't realize how much sugar they eat. You're more concerned about what you put in your car than what you put in your body. There's sugar, there's the pink stuff, and there's equal. You have those three choices.
Only Equal has 100% NutraSweet. No sugar, no saccharin.
When I sit down to make a choice, I choose equal.
Ever tried Plax? Rinsing with Plax before brushing loosens plaque and helps break it up. So you remove more plaque than brushing alone, leaving your teeth cleaner, brighter, and smoother. Break up the plaque with Plax.
Doctor.
Is it right for me? Habitrol.
It's a patch. Well, you know, the patch.
Habitrol.
Habitrol.
You know, Habitrol. It's a patch.
It's new.
Habitrol.
Ask your doctor about Habitrol, nicotine transdermal system.
Thanks, doctor.
Now there's another way to plug into freshness. New Glade plug-in shell.
Plug it in, plug it in.
A new shell design and 2 new fresh scents.
Plug it in, plug it in.
It gently warms this refill cartridge for 30 days of freshness.
Freshen up the air. Freshen everywhere. Plug it in, plug it in.
Glade plug-ins and new Glade plug-in shell.
Plug it in.
From S.C. Johnson Wax.
You know this car?
I know this car.
My father died. You know that he died last week? Did they tell you that?
I don't know.
You don't know if they told you, or you don't know what dead is?
Of course, I'm an excellent driver.
You know how to drive?
Yeah.
This is not my room. It's definitely not my room.
Dustin Hoffman.
What's he going to Wapner?
And Tom Cruise.
There you go, Ray.
Yeah.
You're dancing.
Yeah.
This is it?
Yeah, dancing.
Rain Man, Sunday at a special time, 8, 7 Central.
Tuesday, they call him Dapper Don.
I've spoken to John Gotti myself.
Is the man on trial today the heir to Al Capone?
He rules by intimidation.
Or a two-bit killer?
John got to get out and crack a guy in a minute. Think nothing of it.
James Woods brings you the straight story on mobs and mobsters, Tuesday at 10, 9 Central.
You're not dealing with the faculty at Harvard here.
Primetime. Now from Washington, Sam Donaldson.
The world of organized crime is fighting a new enemy. It's the enemy within. You might call them the me generation of mobsters. Men who put themselves before the family. Men like Salvatore Sammy the Bull Gravano, one-time right-hand man to reputed mob boss John Gotti. Federal prosecutors say Gravano is their secret weapon against Gotti, who's standing trial now in New York City. There have been many others like Gravano, men willing to take a deadly risk by telling family secrets. Chief Correspondent Chris Wallace found out what makes the risk worth it to break the sacred code of silence known as Omerta.
This drop of blood symbolizes your birth into our family. We are one until death.
Omerta, the code of silence. This thing of ours. That's it. This means everything.
If you were to ever disavow the oath, then your blood would be shed like the blood that's being shed now.
In effect, if you break the oath that you take, the oath of silence, the oath of loyalty,
you die.
Whether in the movies or real life, the mob takes its oath of silence seriously. When word got out a few years ago that this New York gangster had testified against his boss, John Gotti, the family settled the case out of court.
Bang! The gun went off. 38, pretty loud. And Pat's head went like this.
For a quarter century, Nicky the Crow Caramandi helped enforce Omerta. Now wearing a disguise, he told us about his years as a hitman for the mob.
You're on call 24 hours a day. I mean, you never know when they're going to call you to bounce somebody.
I want to show you, because you make it all still sound like a gangster movie. This is the handiwork of these murders. This is what you did.
Yes, I was sitting right next to him when he got it. I tried 17 different times to get him.
I mean, that isn't romantic. That isn't movies. That's
true. That's the way it is. I mean...
that's a bullet in the back of the head.
2.
Caramandi was the right-hand man to one of this country's most violent mob bosses, Nicky Scarfo of Philadelphia. Scarfo's empire extended to the casinos of Atlantic City. Authorities say he raked in $40 million a year. For Caramandi, life in the mob was sweet.
If it's raining, 50 umbrellas come out. If you sneeze, 50 handkerchiefs come out. People can't do enough for you. I mean, you have friends that'll kill for you.
You loved it.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure I loved it. I miss it. Right now, I miss it. I miss it a lot.
He misses the mob because 5 years ago, he got word Scarfo doubted his loyalty and had ordered his murder. Caramandi went to the FBI and has since testified in 11 trials that brought 52 convictions, including life in prison for Nicky Scarfo.
They move you around a lot.
We met up with Caramandi in a secret location, far from his new home set up by the Witness Protection Program. And he still expressed pain about going to the feds.
To survive, to stay alive. That's the reason I did it.
How did you feel getting up in court and betraying your family?
Terrible. It was very, very, very hard. I mean, I had to face them. They used to sit there and look at me, stare at me.
The enterprise was known as the Scarfo family of La Casa Nostra, this thing of ours.
The humiliation is, I can't explain it. It's just an awful feeling. And
you turned stool pigeon.
Right. I became a rat, exactly.
Caramandi is part of a pack of rats that has turned on the mob. In the past decade, 16 official members and dozens of soldiers in mafia crime families have cooperated with the government. And perhaps the most damaging, Salvatore Sammy the Bull Gravano, John Gotti's #2 man who may finally bring him down. This is an actual flyer circulating in New York City, targeting Gravano.
Sammy the Bull. He decided, who right now does the government want? Of course, the government would rather have John Gotti than Sammy the Bull. So he decides he's going to make a deal to go against his partner and boss.
Joe Pistone is a former undercover FBI agent and mobster. For 6 years, he infiltrated New York's underworld and helped send more than 100 mobsters to jail. But he says in the old days, there was honor among thieves.
They believed in the values and the traditions. They would never give up anyone in the family. They're dinosaurs now.
The kind of guy who will sit there and do the hard time.
Do the time.
And shut up.
They're a dying breed.
Chicago, 1929, the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. A scene captured in countless gangster movies. Scarface Al Capone engineers a vicious rub-out of a rival gang. During Prohibition, Jewish, Irish, and Italian gangsters fought for control of the lucrative bootlegging trade in the tough towns of the East and Midwest. When the smoke cleared in the early 30s, the Italians were in charge and could draw on a steady stream of wannabe mobsters from Little Italies across the country.
They joined it because it was an honored society. They were men of respect. They had reached the uppermost in their profession of criminals.
Ron Goldstock heads New York's Organized Crime Task Force. He says that over the years, the federal government tried repeatedly to crack down on the mob, but could never break the code of silence.
The government today brought out of hiding the first highly placed Cosa Nostra member ever to break its blood oath and tell all about the vast criminal syndicate.
The first crack in mob loyalty came in 1963. In a series of Senate hearings, Joseph Valachi, a soldier in the New York Mafia, violated Omerta.
This is the way I burn if I expose this organization.
But Valachi stood alone when he betrayed the family. Over the next 20 years, only one other mob member cooperated with the government. What finally broke the code of silence? First, effective use of the RICO statute, the federal racketeering law. Prosecutors can now go after an entire mafia family for running a criminal enterprise and can put members away for decades. But tougher law enforcement wouldn't mean a thing if there hadn't also been a change within the mob. A new generation of young recruits, less interested in the old traditions, more interested in the fast buck. They're known as the yuppie mobsters.
We were making a tremendous amount of money at one time, and I had boats, and I had planes, and I had several homes, and...
You had planes?
Yes. We had a Learjet at our disposal.
Michael Francis planned to be a doctor, but decided he could make more money in the mob. At age 24, he was formally initiated into New York's Colombo crime family. Over the next 10 years, he set up a sophisticated scheme to steal gasoline excise taxes.
Over the years, how much money did you make for the mob?
It's hard to estimate. I mean, several $1 million.
There have been estimates of 80 million. It's a lot of money.
Yes, it is.
What'd you do with all of it?
Spent most of it.
Quiet, please, the background. Roll sound.
With money to burn, Francis dabbled in the film business, producing 4 minor movies and even appearing in one. He was dubbed the Mafia Prince.
And what is the difference of the yuppie generation of mobsters and the older guys?
I knew a lot of old-timers that were content to make their money, put it under the mattress. But the younger guys, such as myself, I mean, wanted to enjoy our life a little bit.
When Francis talks about old-timers, he means people like his father, Sonny, the number 2 man in the Colombo family back in the 60s, before he was sent to prison for bank robbery.
He'll have served 21 years in the last 25 years.
21 years?
21 years.
Has he ever once bargained with the feds?
Not one time.
Has he ever talked with any prosecutors?
He wouldn't even think of it.
But rotting in jail was the last thing the Mafia Prince would do. Michael Francis was sent to prison in 1986. He struck a deal with the government, and 3 years later went free.
You willing to talk to prosecutors again?
The door's open. If they want to talk, I'll talk.
Now back in prison after more shady business schemes, he's willing to deal with the government again if it will reunite him with his family. No, not his crime family, his wife and kids.
You don't have any thoughts at all about breaking this blood oath that you took?
No. I don't believe I betrayed my father. I believe that my loyalty to my family has outweighed that. And I think that my father's loyalty to that oath is antiquated, and I think he's misguided.
What does your father think of what you've done?
Like I said, he would never agree with what I've done.
Attorney Robert Simmels represents members of the underworld. He says yuppie mobsters in prison make a kind of cost-benefit analysis.
Money is the key to the way they have operated their whole lives, and power and prestige. And if they can't have it being a member of the mob, then they'd rather get it by being an author and being free from a long-term jail sentence.
In fact, ex-mobsters are now falling all over themselves to cash in on their lives of crime. In just the past few months, Caramondi's Kiss and Tell, Blood and Honor, and Francise's Quitting the Mob have hit bookstores. And look at Henry Hill, first a best-selling book, then a hit movie. This small-time former Brooklyn mobster has set up what amounts to a cottage industry.
You've made a lot of money as an ex-mobster, haven't you?
I've made some money, yes, sir.
There was the book, Wise Guy. What was your cut from that?
A little over $250,000.
There was the movie, Goodfellas.
$500,000.
And now you're talking about a TV series?
Correct.
What kind of money might you make from that?
It depends upon how many episodes it goes.
You make a fortune as a wise guy. Then, when it becomes inconvenient, you flip. And now you're making money telling the story.
I mean, it's a good country, America.
Now that mobsters who turn can not only survive, but thrive, law enforcement officials say the bosses are increasingly vulnerable. That after 60 years, the mob is on its last legs.
The situation in New York is to the point now where no one wants to actually take over, be the boss of a family, because they know they're going to get targeted.
What is the cumulative effect of all of this disloyalty?
The infrastructure of the mob is crumbling. In 10 years, the mob is going to be unrecognizable.
The feds say they have got the mob on the ropes.
It's never going to die. It's something that just won't die. They're going to nibble the FBI here and there. They're going to do a little damage to individuals, but not to the structure of the mob.
Self-confessed rats like Caramondi think they'll keep living in a kind of limbo, protected by the resources of the federal government, but pursued by an old way of life that still has a hold on them.
As you look back on it, do you feel you did the right thing going to the government?
It's just an awful feeling. Now I got to live in fear all my life, worried about getting whacked, getting shot in the head somewhere, and sometimes I think I was better off if I would have got killed than to live like this.
20 mob bosses and hundreds of mafia foot soldiers have been convicted over the past 10 years, thanks in part to family members who sold out to the government.
Speaking frankly, the Congressman from Massachusetts, when Primetime continues after this from our ABC stations.
For the first time, Mike Tyson's rape victim tells me her story of what happened that night.
2 o'clock in the morning in a man's room with beds. What were you doing there at 2 o'clock in the morning?
An exclusive interview on 2020, Friday.
Good evening. This is a Channel 5 update. Norwalk's kidnapped baby case has apparently turned into a homicide investigation.
Searchers found a baby's body late this afternoon. Police assume it's that of 7-day-old Shane Lass. His mother reported the baby stolen from her car yesterday afternoon. FBI and police combed Norwalk garbage cans, ditches, and alleys for clues. Area volunteers had also taken up the search out of concern.
You know, it's every parent's nightmare, you know, to walk out and not have a child, and not know where he's at.
The baby's body was found in a field. Officials wouldn't comment on its condition, but said an autopsy and crime analysis would be done.
We'll have the latest for you at 10.
Happy Chef and Channel 5 are teaming up to give you a chance to win free tickets to the World Championship Rodeo at Vets Auditorium on March 6th and 7th. Just send a postcard to this address, and you'll have a chance of winning one of 35 family packs of rodeo tickets. Send your entry in today, and your family will have a chance to see these guys in person, courtesy of Channel 5 and Happy Chef.
I tried everything for my sore back. Pain pills, exercise, hot tub, even massage.
As the Democratic presidential candidates come streaming out of New Hampshire, there's a man standing like a coach on the sidelines, barking ideas at them. He's even written a book about Democratic presidential campaigns. Congressman Barney Frank of Massachusetts, a man called one of the truly gifted legislators of our time. By some accounts, able to influence up to 70% of the Democrats' votes on his issues, fair housing, defense cuts. So you're probably expecting one of those smooth, ingratiating politicians, right? Get ready. Frank, from a mixed neighborhood, wealthy to working class, is the kind of liberal who tells other liberals where to get off. A public figure fierce about private life, a scrappy intellectual who has made a career out of saying exactly what he thinks.
anyone who tells you that he or she really enjoys campaigning is either a liar or a sociopath. You know, the voters don't like the president, the voters don't like Congress, the voters aren't too crazy about the press, the voters aren't too happy about a lot of things. You want to know something about what the politicians think, and I think it's about time you guys asked us? The voters are no bargain either.
Meet the man who does the most scandalous thing you can do in Washington. He tells the truth.
You really haven't the slightest idea what you were talking about. This does anger me. I have a degree of impatience that I wish I didn't have. I wish I were calmer. I wish I didn't fidget as much. I know that sometimes I'm too short with people. Explain things, please. I mean, don't. I mean, I need you to explain it, okay? So just, that's a flaw that I wish I could deal with better. On the other hand, I think people are entitled to more honesty than they get sometimes from some of us.
How much more honesty? Well, in 1987, before anyone could print it, Barney Frank became the first congressman in history to volunteer these words.
I'm gay. I spent from 1953, when I figured that out, at the age of 13, till June of 1987, concealing that in varying degrees. It struck me that there was only one thing about me to which I wouldn't answer. People have said, well, why do you answer that? It's private. Well, my religion is private, but I'm Jewish, and I think if I were to refuse to say those Jewish people would say, well, what's you doing that for?
In that one moment, some of his friends and family thought Frank had risked everything until the constituents returned him to Congress with an overwhelming 70% of the vote. When you were going to run for office, did you talk to your mother about this issue? Did you talk to your sister, to your brother about it?
One of the things that as I said, I think politicians don't do often enough, to be honest, is to be straightforward. And so I hope you'll not be offended when I tell you that is absolutely none of your business. I cannot imagine anything that is less your business or the business of anyone else.
Okay, now let's see if I get clubbed to death on this one again. Right. What difference has being gay made?
Oh, I won't discuss it. I won't discuss it.
Part of what people want to know is they think that it makes up who you are, and the judgments you make at tough times are really essential to understanding who you are.
That's real rationalization. What you're talking about is the natural instinct to kind of be nosy about other people. I have that. Of course, we all like to kind of prowl around and know things about other people. I just don't feel any obligation to contribute to it. If people want to judge me as a public official, they have 19 years in which to judge me.
You are our champion.
Back in the 4th Congressional District, his constituents judge him as a man who gets things done.
The biggest single thing we can do is health care, but we must maintain the integrity of funding for the public educational, providing police protection and fire protection and sanitation. The federal government has not served you well or fairly.
This guy's a sweetheart. Late at night, early in the morning.
Hi, how are you? Nice to see you again.
Constituents fill 18-hour days with their troubles.
I've got a daughter-in-law. Her husband, he hasn't worked since December. How are they going to continue?
In these parts, the congressman is called just Barney, a kid who grew up pumping gas at his father's truck stop in Jersey City, but made it to Harvard and the big time against the odds. Even his 70-year-old mother pitched in for his TV campaign.
How can I be so sure that Barney will do the right thing by us older people? Because he's my son.
But back in the early 80s, Frank himself was not exactly your tailored-for-TV congressman. He couldn't care less about clothes, and at one point ballooned to 275 pounds.
That's my mafia picture. I always thought that looked like someone who had been found floating face down in Kelsey Creek up there. I'm a nervous eater, and some people lose weight during campaigns. I gain weight when I'm under pressure.
He even had a winning campaign slogan, "Neatness isn't everything." Neatness isn't, but in Washington, toughness is. And Frank has proven even tough enough to give his own party a kick in the pants. He does it in his book, Speaking Frankly, which takes a look at nearly 25 years of Democratic presidential defeat.
I would say I do not regard continuing indifference to electoral results as a sign of moral superiority. I think it's stupid.
Frank says if Democratic presidential candidates have looked more tentative and timid than the Republicans, it's because at the national level the party suffers from the fatal not-supposed-to disease. You know, the infection of the 60s, when good liberal Democrats were not supposed to say America's the greatest, defense is supremely important, and criminals are slugs.
And what happened was, we have conceded at the presidential level until fairly recently patriotism, respect for the law, opposition to criminals, insistence that people work hard.
But you know, the Republicans say, you're just saying we were right and you were wrong.
Yes, I think that many of the criticisms the Republicans made were accurate at the rhetorical level, not at the public policy level.
This time, Frank says Democratic presidential candidates have to be allowed to talk tough on policy and not be bludgeoned to death if they deviate from the pure liberal line. For instance, even if a candidate supports the death penalty.
Now, I'm against the death penalty, but I must tell you, I have no recollection of reading about someone who was going to be executed that I'm going to miss.
But you seem to be saying that the presidential candidates should take positions that you wouldn't agree with in order to win.
No, Dan, now you're caricaturing, and I don't know why you want to do that. That's not useful argument.
Okay, I surrender. But what about this poor guy, a liberal constituent who ventured the same point to his ready-for-combat congressman?
I'm against the death penalty, then I wouldn't vote for anything that was in support of the death penalty.
Even if,
that's an ironclad issue.
Right.
That's not a matter
even
of
if,
either or.
Even if...
You can't sort of hop, skip, and jump back and forth.
I don't hop, skip, and jump. But again, even if that might stave off a worse result, good. Have your purity and feel good about it for yourself. You will help no one. What I am saying to them is, give them a break. Let them win. They are trying to help you, but they can't do that if you make unreasonable demands. I understand what a good feeling it is to vote for a perfect candidate, because I once voted for a perfect candidate. That was the first time I ran for the state legislature in this district. By the time I ran for re-election, I had a couple problems with my record. But I figured I was the best candidate in the race, so I worked very hard for me anyway.
In fact, everything worked for Barney Frank for his first 9 years in Congress, until 1989. When suddenly he found himself standing in the political wreckage he had created himself.
The spring of 1985, I met a young man in his 20s, who I knew to be a male prostitute. And I hired him personally, and I saw myself, I guess, I would have to say, with a little embarrassment, as Henry Higgins. I was going to take a bright human being and help him live up to his potential and make somebody a more constructive member of society. And I was being misled.
The prostitute's name was Stephen Goby.
I came to praise Congressman Frank, not to bury him. I came to praise Congressman Frank, not to bury him.
Goby told the House Ethics Committee that he had run a prostitution ring out of Frank's Washington home, and that Frank knew all about it, something Frank fiercely denied.
Are you under any pressure from others in your party to step down?
The liberal Boston Globe said Frank should resign for the good of Congress. Right-wing Republicans called for his censure. Frank has said it all happened because he felt fat, in the closet, and alone. What the roughest time in politics for you?
This was the toughest time because it was a combination of feelings of guilt, as well as anger. That was the one period in my life where I think I behaved inappropriately, more, I believe, out of clumsiness and stupidity. Certainly not in my judgment of malice, but nonetheless I did it. And, yeah.
Today, the Committee on Standards of Official Conduct filed its report.
In July 1990, the Ethics Committee agreed Frank did not know about the prostitution ring, yet the House formally voted to reprimand him. By November, he would suffer a heart attack, just days after his voters once again stood by their man.
I've been meaning to write. You're a man of my heart. I said, you're fighting for your rights, and I'll always vote for you.
It has to move you a lot to know that people stand by you.
Oh, enormously. I guess in the abstract, you know, that people don't expect other people to be perfect. But it is still very moving to be the recipient of some compassion.
Compassion is one thing. Politics is another, and it still remains something of a political miracle that within a few months the gunslinger was back and taking aim at Congress. If anything, he was more powerful than before. Even his old enemies agree.
I think that a lesser person would have been destroyed. I think that it's a tribute to the many friendships he created and to the fact that he has the courage and the intelligence and the energy to go back and just dive in no matter how painful it was.
And now he also has something else, a 6-year relationship with Herb Moses, a 32-year-old financial analyst who has changed somewhat, the very private nature of the public man.
I am going to introduce my lover, Barney Frank, who does take me to his office parties.
Tell me about him, Herb.
No.
I would ask anybody to talk about the person they're with.
I understand, but I'm not anybody. I don't have the freedom that just anybody has.
And then, as we changed tapes, he asked if he could answer that question about Herb again.
You asked me if I would talk about Herb, and I guess the answer is I wish we lived in a world in which I could do that in a normal kind of way, normal in the sense that it wouldn't create a lot of political waste, but we're in a transitional period. I don't choose to make a political statement about things that all of us would like to be able to keep private and personal.
Is it worth it having to tell everybody everything?
On the whole, it is, yeah. This is a great job for me, and I must say, no sympathy with my colleagues who consistently complain. Nobody in recorded history has ever been forced to run for office at gunpoint, or even at knife point or chair point. I just feel really lucky to have this job, and yeah, if I am able to keep this job for as long as I'm functional, I'll be just thrilled.
Congressman Frank's book, Speaking Frankly, should be available now in the bookstores.
When Primetime continues, one woman's very personal story.
Two coffees and a sweet and low.
And now what?
They want a coffee and a sweet and a low.
They're never gonna leave.
I fix it.
Oh, Salamia.
We asked for sweet and low. I'm so sorry. This is all we got.
Well, then we're leaving.
So soon.
Sweet and low. For millions of people, there's just no equal. All-natural Butter Bud Sprinkles and Mix from the makers of Sweet and Low. It has the flavor of butter because it's made with butter. But every serving has no fat, no cholesterol, and low sodium. So you can enjoy all these dishes and find a new use for this one.
Would you buy a John Deere lawn tractor if you could pick one up for the same price as some other mowers?
Sure.
Now you can get a 12.5-horse John Deere for under $2,000 while supplies last.
I can't fly with this head cold. My nose is too stuffed up and congested.
Here, take Actifed.
For strong medicine, take full prescription strength Actifed. Of the 3 leading cold medicines once sold by prescription, only one comes in its original maximum full prescription strength formula, only Actifed.
You okay?
Yeah, this stuff really works.
Take full prescription strength Actifed. And to help reduce the fever and sinus pain of a bad head cold, take Actifed Plus.
It's good.
It's real good.
It's home cooking soup.
Not hot enough.
No? Well, better let me check. Gee, I'd say perfect. Charlie, what do you say?
Celery and carrots are mighty good.
Well, Stan, how about you?
Chicken's delicious. Noodles, too.
Golly, Fred, looks like you got nothing to complain about.
Gee, guys, thanks for nothing.
Don't mention it.
Our pleasure.
The name is Home Cookin', and so is the taste from Campbell's.
Terrible Terry Norris puts his world title on the line against undefeated Carl Daniels. It's the Fruit of the Loom Professional Boxing Series Saturday on ABC Sports.
He's the power back now. So fast.
One day,
Keep down and burn it.
from the disaster that caught the nation's eye comes the movie that will capture your heart. James Coburn, Richard Thomas, and Charlton Heston.
Of all the places in America we could have landed, I thank God it was here.
Crash Landing, Monday at 9, 8 Central.
We're going to take a few minutes now to introduce you to someone. A woman born into a hugely wealthy Detroit family, rock-ribbed Republicans, friends of all the presidents. She's my friend, too. And a few days ago, she called and asked if she could send out a video letter of sorts to you about something that's happened to her. She's sending it on behalf of the thousands of others it's happened to as well. The people of Michigan first heard her story on their nightly news. The stunning disclosure that a member of one of Detroit's most prominent families...
Good evening, everybody. The daughter of multimillionaire and Detroit philanthropist Max Fisher went public.
First it was Magic, and now it's Mary, and of course tens of thousands of others.
I had to calm myself down. I had to try and figure out what I was going to do, and that's what I asked everybody. And I got the answer very, very clearly, is just tell your story, be honest, tell it from the heart, and it'll make a difference. My name is Mary Fisher. I grew up in Detroit, Michigan. I have a brother and 3 sisters. Went to private schools. We traveled. We were comfortable, very comfortable. We could do almost anything that anybody would want to do. When Ford became president, I went to the White House and became the first woman advance man for a president.
One of those 19 advanced men is a woman, Mary Fisher.
I would lead the team and work on the schedule and meet the local people. I'm Mary Fisher. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
I met my husband in New York. He's an artist, and we did some work together on a business that I had in the early 80s. Brian and I were both putting our lives together, and in the hopes that this would be a wonderful life. He was recovering from alcoholism and drug dependence. He believes that that's where he contracted the disease. He had an AIDS test, and it came back negative. I had my first child in October of '87. We decided to move to Florida permanently. We opened a gallery, and I opened a studio and began to work here. And then we adopted a child. My husband and I were divorced in 1990, but we remained friends. And in the summer of '91, he was not feeling too well and decided to go to a doctor who suggested that maybe he have another HIV test. And that's when he found out and called me. It took 2 weeks to get my test back. And you know that horrible moment when the nurse on the phone says, "Oh, Mary, just a minute," and puts the doctor on the phone, and then he said to me, "Mary, I'm sorry, but it's positive." In the beginning, anger pops up, and fear, and pain, and then hope. I have tried to tell everybody, as many people as I could in person. But then I had to get tested, and I'm positive, but the children are fine. Being open and allowing others their own judgment puts the ball in their court and says, I accept me with HIV, just like you accept me with blue eyes. This is now a part of me that cannot be denied. I took my children to visit the President and Mrs. Ford, to tell them so that they could see I was all right and my children were all right. There is a stigma and a discrimination surrounding this disease. And I'm saying that I hope that I can change that. It's difficult to explain, but something has happened since I've been touched by this disease. I felt as if I had numbered days, not numbered years, but numbered moments, actually. My children are only 2 and 4. I don't think it's anything that they can cope with. I'm going to have to learn how to do that. I'm HIV positive, and that's all. I'm very healthy. I'm asymptomatic. Make a handprint. Come on. I'm making a handprint on you. Yeah, you can make a handprint on Mom. Come on over here. I find myself telling them special little things that maybe I wouldn't tell them otherwise. You know, like they need to take care of each other. They need to be loving with each other. They need that extra special love that they'll have to take with them from me. What I want to say is that it can happen to anyone. That it happened to me, and I was in a marriage, comfortable, happy, with everything that anyone could ever want. So if it can happen to me, it can happen to you.
about to see how Goodyear is changing all-season driving right before your eyes. Introducing Aquatread, only from Goodyear. Aquatread's advanced design channels water out of your way for dependable all-season traction, especially in the rain when you may need it most. Aquatread, the newest reason why we say the best tires in the world have Goodyear written all over them.
Most eye doctors agree dry, irritated eyes should be treated, and doctors agree dry, irritated eyes can be effectively treated with soothing, cooling Visine Extra. Visine gets the red out. Only good, healthy things grow in Mrs. Dash's garden, and from this garden, Mrs. Dash has created a delicious, salt-free blend of 14 herbs and spices that give food a livelier, zestier flavor. The most ordinary things become extraordinary. You're not only eating healthier, you're eating better-tasting foods, because Mrs. Dash brings you a garden of flavors, 6 varieties in all, instead of salt.
It could start in your office, in your home, over lunch. But now, wherever heartburn starts, this is where it ends. Introducing new Maalox Heartburn Relief Formula. No ordinary antacid works like this one to put out heartburn.
Tony has some drinks, a few joints, and got into a fatal accident tonight. Only he doesn't know it yet. Drugs make you forget. And if you forget how risky sex can be, you could catch the AIDS virus. AIDS, another way drugs can kill.
The high-flying Seminoles of Florida State take the court to face the Blue Demons from DePaul. It's Game 1 of the 7-Up Shootout, Sunday on ABC Sports.
Ted Koppel joins us now with a preview of tonight's Nightline. Ted?
Thank you, Sam. Tonight, we've got a Nightline investigation. We have pulled together alarming details of unsafe nuclear reactors in the former Soviet Union and in Eastern Europe. And we'll have exclusive pictures of a fire last fall at one of Chernobyl's undamaged reactors, a fire that could have caused a meltdown. Diane?
Thanks, Ted. And now for a look at a very important story we'll be bringing you next week.
And this is our mammogram.
For 4 months, Primetime has been undercover investigating mammography in the United States. Our hidden cameras find unreadable film, faulty machinery, unlicensed operators.
Are you ready to see our preliminary? Yes, we are.
But that's not true, and the patient never knows. We even posed as a clinic to see which doctors caught the cancers in our films, and which ones didn't.
Do you remember a clinic recently called Clínica de Salud Femenina?
Yeah.
Well, let us give you our card.
Next week, the results of our investigation, including vital questions women with breast cancer think you should ask before you have a mammogram.
How many of you had negative mammograms?
A clean bill of health, and in every case, it was wrong. That's next week on Primetime.
And don't forget to watch 2020 tomorrow night. I'm Diane Sawyer in New York. Good night for now. Good night, Sam.
Good night, Diane. I'm Sam Donaldson in Washington. Join us again next Thursday night for another edition of Primetime Live.
For a transcript of Primetime, please send $5 to 1535 Grand Street, Denver, Colorado, 80203.
Primetime is a presentation of ABC News. More Americans get their news from ABC News than from any other source.
America's watching ABC.
Just ahead on the Channel 5 News, a missing Norwalk baby case becomes an apparent case of murder. Searchers discovered this week-old baby's body this afternoon in a field.
However, police still don't have a suspect. I'm Scott Smith. I'll have a live report.
The government finally makes a ruling on breast implants.
That plus a medical breakthrough for heart attack patients. Channel 5 News is next.